The roar of an engine, echoing across a frozen airfield, signaled the beginning of another daring experiment. Each ignition was a gamble, a defiant challenge to the unknown, as mechanics and pilots braced themselves for what might come next. The scream of wind over a flimsy canvas wing, the fabric trembling with every gust, and then sometimes, a sudden, chilling silence. In that silence, hope and fear mingled, suspended in the air as the fate of the flight hung in the balance. For every hero celebrated in propaganda with medals pinned to their chests and their faces splashed across newspapers, there were countless others whose names were never spoken aloud. There was a ghost haunting the wreckage of a failed prototype, a silent witness to the price of progress. Each twisted fuselage and shattered wing told a story of ambition cut short. Russia's fighter aircraft story is written in oil, smoke, and blood. The stains on the snow and the scars on the earth marked the relentless pursuit of flight, no matter the cost. Before the Cold War's jets streaked across the sky, a generation of pilots and engineers paid the ultimate price for progress. They were young, often barely out of school, driven by dreams of glory and the hope of a better future. They were pioneers, and victims of a system that demanded results at any cost, often ignoring physics and human limits. The pressure was immense, the deadlines impossible, and the consequences of failure severe. Imagine a young test pilot in the 1920s climbing into a cockpit that was little more than a wooden chair bolted to a fragile frame. There were no guarantees, no safety nets, just courage and a willingness to face the unknown. Every flight was a roll of the dice, and the odds were rarely in the pilot's favor. The tension before takeoff was palpable, as each man knew he might not return. Engineers, under threat of imprisonment or worse, rushed designs from drawing board to runway. Innovation was born of desperation, and mistakes could be fatal. The result? Aircraft that were brilliant in concept, pushing the boundaries of what seemed possible, and capturing the imagination of a nation hungry for progress. But all too often, these machines were catastrophically flawed in execution. A single miscalculation could turn a marvel of engineering into a death trap. Test pilots became a grimly accepted sacrifice to the god of aviation progress. Their bravery was legendary, but their losses were quietly mourned, their stories fading into the background of history. This is the hidden history of Russian fighter jets, a tale of ambition, wreckage, and the lives of its bravest sons. Behind every triumph soared a shadow, a reminder that the sky was paved with both dreams and the wreckage of those who dared to reach for it. The story of Russia's fighter troubles begins with the Polikarpov 1-1, a plane that would set the tone for decades of struggle and innovation in Soviet aviation. Designed in the early 1920s, the I-1 was the Soviet Union's first attempt at building an indigenous monoplane fighter, a bold step for a nation eager to prove itself on the world stage after years of war and revolution. On paper, the I-1 looked like a revolution. Its sleek modern lines and promises of speed captured the imagination of engineers and military officials alike, who saw it as a symbol of Soviet progress and technological prowess. But in the air, the reality was far more grim. The I-1 was fundamentally unstable, prone to sudden, uncontrollable flat spins that left even the most skilled pilots helpless. Each test flight was a gamble with death. The very first prototype nearly killed its pilot on its maiden flight, a harrowing warning that was largely ignored in the rush to modernize. Despite these early disasters, immense political and military pressure to field a modern fighter kept the project alive. The Soviet leadership was determined not to fall behind Western powers, no matter the cost. Tragedy soon followed. Test pilot Arkady Koshelenko lost his life while trying to escape a spinning I-1. His parachute became hopelessly tangled in the tail, sealing his fate and sending shockwaves through the aviation community. Even as evidence of the I-1's fatal flaws mounted, a small production batch was ordered. The need to show progress outweighed the mounting risks. Pilots, well aware of the dangers, grimly nicknamed the I-1 the Coffin. Each flight was a test of courage and luck, not just skill. Accidents became all too common, and more often than not, they were fatal. The I-1's reputation as a killer was cemented in the minds of all who flew it. Eventually, the authorities had no choice but to withdraw the I-1 from service. Its wings were literally sawn off to prevent any further flights, a dramatic end to a disastrous chapter. What began with high hopes and grand ambitions ended in total failure and disappointment for the engineers and officials who had pinned their dreams on the I-1. The I-1 left behind a trail of broken aircraft and lost lives, a somber legacy that haunted Soviet aviation for years to come. It was a humiliating lesson in the cost of rushing innovation, a stark reminder that technological ambition must be matched by careful engineering and respect for the dangers of flight. The Soviet Air Force learned painfully that ambition alone could not keep a plane in the sky. The I-1's failure would shape the future of Soviet fighter design, forcing a new era of caution, learning, and relentless pursuit of safer, more reliable aircraft. After the I-5, Polikarpov pushed boundaries again with the I-16, a revolutionary monoplane with retractable landing gear. Soviet pilots called it Ishak, or donkey, for its stubbornness and toughness, but the I-16 was notoriously difficult to fly, killing hundreds of pilots. Its short fuselage and rearward center of gravity made it agile, but dangerously unstable. Takeoffs and landings were perilous, especially for novices. Pilots had to crank the landing gear by hand, 44 turns during critical moments. Many lost control while distracted, or couldn't lower the gear if wounded. Despite its flaws, the I-16 became the backbone of the Soviet Air Force. The high attrition rate was accepted as the price of modernization. For pilots, flying the I-16 was a daily gamble against both enemy and machine. When Germany invaded in 1941, the I-16 was obsolete. New fighters like the Yak-1 and Lag-3 were rushed into production, but haste bred deadly flaws. The Lag-3, built mostly of wood, was underpowered and prone to catastrophic failure. Pilots called it the varnished guaranteed coffin. Yakovlev's fighters were better, but early models suffered from poor materials and shoddy construction. Plywood skin peeled off mid-air, canopies trapped pilots in burning planes. Many died not from enemy fire but from their own machines. Soviet strategy favored quantity over quality, sacrificing lives for numbers. Later models improved, but only after a mountain of early failures and lost airmen. After World War II, the Soviet Union rushed into the jet age. The Yak-15 was a crude hybrid, essentially a Yak-3 with a German jet engine bolted underneath. The engine's exhaust scorched the tail and kicked up debris, risking structural failure. The unreliable engine had a service life of just 25 hours. Flameouts were common. No pressurized cockpit, no ejection seat, bailouts were deadly. Despite glaring flaws, the Yak-15 was rushed into service as a jet trainer. Many pilots paid the price for this dangerous shortcut to jet technology. The Yak-15 was a stopgap, a bridge to the jet age that claimed many lives. It proved that copying technology without understanding it was a recipe for disaster. The lessons were harsh but necessary for future progress. While Yakovlev built the Yak-15, Mikoyan and Gurevich created the MiG-9, a twin-engine jet with a fatal flaw. Its nose-mounted cannons vented gun gases straight into the engines, causing flameouts at high altitude. The first pilot to die was Ingrinchik, whose engines quit during a weapons test. Instead of redesigning, engineers added gas deflectors and imposed firing restrictions. Pilots entered combat knowing their own weapons could kill them. The MiG-9 service was short and troubled, plagued by mistrust and mechanical failures. Weak landing gear and unreliable engines added to the danger. The MiG-9 became another guaranteed coffin in Soviet aviation history. Integrating weapons and airframes required more than brute force. The lesson was paid for with pilots' lives. The MiG-15 finally put Soviet jet design on the map, dominating the skies over Korea. But its success masked a hidden history of mechanical failure and non-combat losses. The powerful engine was a reverse-engineered British design, but Soviet production quality was poor. Turbine blades failed, engines exploded, and hydraulic systems leaked. The MiG-15 could enter unrecoverable spins and ejection seats were unreliable. Many MiGs were lost not to enemy fire but to their own flaws. Inexperienced pilots, especially Chinese and North Koreans, suffered the most. Soviet veterans struggled too, fighting both the enemy and their own machines. The MiG-15's legend was built on a foundation of wrecks. Many never saw combat. Its success came at a bloody, often hidden price. The journey from the humble I-1 biplane to the formidable MiG-15 is a saga of ambition, innovation, and frequent catastrophe. It is a story written not just in blueprints and metal, but in the courage and sacrifice of those who dared to dream of flight. Soviet aviation advanced through violent lurches, each new breakthrough propelled by the wreckage and hard lessons of the last disaster. Every crash was a grim teacher, forcing engineers and pilots to confront the limits of their knowledge and the harsh realities of their ambitions. The extreme pressures of a totalitarian state demanded results at any cost, often prioritizing power and speed over safety and caution. Under Stalin's watchful eye, failure was not just a setback, it could be a death sentence. Designers toiled under constant threat, knowing a single mistake could end their careers or worse. Pilots climbed into unproven machines, fully aware that their greatest enemy might not be the adversary in the sky, but the very aircraft they flew. The ghosts of early disasters lingered, becoming harsh but invaluable teachers for the next generation. Each loss was mourned but also studied, as the Soviets sought to turn tragedy into progress. Lessons were written in blood. Reliable engines, stable aerodynamics, and rigorous quality control became non-negotiable. Every improvement was paid for with sweat, tears, and sometimes lives. Later fighters like the MiG-21 and Su-27, celebrated for their performance and reliability, were born from these painful lessons. They soared higher and faster, carrying the legacy of those who came before. The path to a powerful air force was a costly climb over twisted metal and shattered dreams. Each wreck was a step toward mastery of the skies. Today's advanced Russian fighters, like the Su-57, are built on a foundation of tragedy, sacrifice, and relentless determination. They are the result of decades of hard-won experience. The true history of Russian aviation is a powerful reminder. The path to the sky is often paved with tragedy, but also with resilience, innovation, and the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to be grounded.